The Waves of Tech is the down-to-earth tech podcast for you, your family, and your friends. We remove all the complicated, drawn-out explanations of technology and simply talk about how technology is influencing every element of our lives, from social media and the cloud to tweeting and mobile communication. We talk tech in a different way. So plug in your devices and listen as we get ready to ride the waves of tech.
On episode 413 of The Waves of Tech, hacking the United States midterms, spotting fake Amazon reviews, and Netflix deletes user reviews. The Waves of Tech is powered by modernlife.network, modern issues, modern discussions. Well, Steve, welcome in. Episode 413, another good Tech Monday. I don't know where I'm going with this, but happy Tech Monday to you.
I don't know where you're going with either, because actually this was a pretty difficult week to put together an agenda because there really wasn't a whole lot going on. I don't think anything that we really wanted to talk about in terms of, technology and how it's working within our lives.
Yeah, it's unique. I mean, that's exactly why we titled our show The Waves of Tech. It goes in waves. Sometimes we're talking about, artificial intelligence and AI and virtual reality. Sometimes we're talking about business acquisitions in the mobile market. And then we have these waves, these sort of lulls where we get to catch up on some of the unusual things that maybe aren't making the headlines, maybe aren't the biggest talking points. And I think that's where we're heading here in episode 413. Well, Steve, let's kick this off. Let's talk about hacking the U.S. midterms. It's been a big talking point since the presidential election here in the United States of 2016 with Russian interference. And we've seen a number of counties and jurisdictions within the state saying that they have noticed hacks within their voting systems. And Steve, it's really interesting is we'll have a couple links up in the show notes here, but this thing is called Hacking the U.S. Midterms, the article. It's child's play. And I'll let you dive into that here in a second, but we know that this is an ongoing problem. We know that the United States democratic process and the security around voting systems has been at risk for a number of years. Lord knows how many years beforehand and how many years going we're going to have this. And unfortunately, just to report here on the domestic side in the U.S. is that last month, Congress voted, essentially along party lines, and they rejected an amendment that would have injected an additional $380 million into boosting voting security during 2019. And unfortunately, that has fallen off the table, mostly due to political argumentation that seems to be a common occurrence here within the United States and mostly internationally as well. So it's a heated conversation, Steve. It's a conversation that never culminates in much support across both party lines. But I think the threat is really serious. We've known this. The United States Secretary of State said that websites should not be super vulnerable. They've known about these vulnerabilities. They're not being sufficiently tasked and treated to gather fixes and patches, and it's putting the democratic voting process at risk. And that's a really scary place, Steve, to be in 2018, where everything we do is electronically filed with our voting.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And what we're going to talk about is part of the hackability of these things. There was a contest that was put on at DEF CON, and it's an annual hacking conference in Las Vegas. And about 300 children attended, and they did things from lock picking and soldering and many other things. And one of them was a test on hacking, and they were using the hackability of voting. As we know, it's not that hacking really changes my vote in terms of me physically altering my vote, but when all the counties have websites that calculate returns and things like this, that can be modified if hacked by increasing or decreasing the tally, the vote, and many other things. So what they did is many of these election sites, they replicated, and they had all these kids attempt to hack them and change information. To include the first person that actually hacked one of these websites was in less than 10 minutes, and then began going in using SQL commands, doing table updates and etc. to change tallies and to include putting themselves in their name on the election results. Now, you mentioned from a governmental, societal kind of perspective that this security certainly needs to be looked at and really beefed up because it is a part of our democracy. The other side of this I want to talk about, Dave, is kids. And it hasn't been too many years ago that when there were these issues, these complexities out there, and it was really an issue of we've got to bring in the real experts. Let's bring in Big Blue, IBM, and, their suits and ties can find out what's going on here and da-da-da-da-da. In an assumption that being around in the technology world in working for a big organization really had meaningful impact, in which we know that is not the case because kids of now are born into technology. They're programming at 5, 6 years old and things like that. I couldn't even spell programming when I was 5 or 6 years old, let alone do it. And where I'm going with this is these kids are experts. I'm not saying to tap into their knowledge, but we have to learn that the pace of architectural security within the online space is crucial and almost impossible to maintain or keep up with those that are coming from behind in history to use these technologies. They're already ahead of the game. So these bright kids, what am I trying to say? Already have the knowledge, the tools, and the resources to do these kinds of penetrations. Then I think that the problem is even more despair than what we really think it is. I hope I've said something there right.
No, it makes total sense, Steve. I mean, look at, as you mentioned, this hackathon that was going on. The system in America and many of these voting systems are so insecure that an 8-year-old, an 11-year-old, and a 13-year-old, this is not taking away anything from them and their abilities. It's just someone that young who has access to a computer, and within moments and minutes of coaching from somebody who is smart enough to understand the vulnerabilities, even these children are learning how to hack into them and get into these systems and change voting, put in their own name, change election results within a few minutes. That is the major problem. I think you hit on it very directly, Steve, is that these kids are learning, and what they're learning is that there's organizations called Roots Asylum, and it's actually a nonprofit organization that promotes hacking for good, which is essentially going in and finding vulnerabilities within nonprofits, within some of the the specialized areas here, within the United States and globally, where, okay, where is the vulnerability? Where can we hack for good? Meaning, here's your vulnerabilities. Here's what you need to do to fix it. Here's the investment on the back end that you need to put into your organization. Because, Steve, it's no longer just investing in the organization associated with just people and computers and your building and your staff time and training. It's about investing in your security, in your infrastructure, your network, your background, hiring good IT staff and consultants to make sure that everything that you do is secure and safe and, not unhackable, but to the greatest extent, you need to put up as much barriers so you're not the easy target. And you're exactly right. Kids are learning to code and program and hack in such early ages now, and it's incorporated into their mentality. They see their mom and dad doing it. They see their friends doing it. When you go to school, many schools have 1-to-1. So they're in front of this computer and they're learning the nuances of technology week in and week out. If we're as a society is not willing to step up and hold our elected officials responsible, saying, yes, you need to go out there and put more money in financing and retrofitting into these systems, because, Steve, I'm not sure if my vote is actually going to count in the next local election, midterm election, or presidential election, or congressional election, because we have kids that are 8 years old within minutes breaking into these systems and changing voting records. So I'm with you 100%. These kids can do so much for us. It's just a matter of, are we willing to accept the vulnerabilities and the insecurities we have and make a change in the future to help ourselves?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting. When we talk about what we talked about last week about the 59 days of code and what young people are doing to change through technology, their living environments, what's going around their cities and counties, and then you tie it into something like this, and what does it kind of equate to? It means that there's a wealth of knowledge out there when it comes to the younger generations. Let's give them some credit, and let's also move them in the right direction to be white hat, not black hat. And because, we've talked about it a million times, the hackers are winning the war, and we need to get more of the upcoming youth on the good side of this and do right things, Dave.
Absolutely. And Steve, I know I've been to expos in the educational space, and I know you have visited plenty of conferences, work related, where there's more of an enterprise approach to security and vulnerabilities. But at the ages of 10, 11, and 12, there are a lot of eager children out there. There are a lot of kids out there that find a problem and want to find a solution for it. So they're eager to get out there, find out where the bugs in the code are, what's wrong with the programming, where are the slip-ups and vulnerabilities associated with security. These kids are out there wanting to learn at 10, 11, 12 years old. And when you have a contest, at DEF CON, where kids can take part in the hacking, the hacking conference, it's a telling story story of how society is moving and how it's being organized. And it's great to see both the male and the female, the younger boys and young girls in the mix, because this could mean, someone of those 300 could be the next, big player within the security industry of the technology space. So I just love to see the eagerness with these children. And I just wish our democratic process and the people involved in decision making could understand that risk and understand that eagerness in which so many of us have, that we want to be voted, our votes to count, and we want to be taken seriously. And, maybe it is some whiz 8-year-old kid that can go in there and just completely delete every voting, record for an entire U.S. election for that to kind of be the tipping bar. I hate to see that happen. But again, sometimes it's these larger scale events that really get the attention of some of the quote unquote bigwigs in the political circles.
Dave, I think it's been a couple years, but we did an entire episode on internet reviews, whether they're good, they're bad, 5 stars, thumbs up, whatever the case may be. And it was interesting discussion where, in honesty, you have to take all reviews pretty much with a grain of salt. And there are companies that have actually built their companies and their reputation off of reviews, like Amazon and Yelp and TripAdvisor. You can throw in Lyft and Uber, Airbnb, and that's kind of how they fund the level of their service, right? Is from reviews and ratings and things like this. Some of the sites, I can spot that there's a lot of mojo going on there and it's not too accurate. And for the most part, I kind of dance around a lot of the reviews when I'm looking at various things. But one that I've always pretty much trusted, to be real honest with you, have been Amazon reviews. Amazon reviews I always thought were viable and credible because of some of the wording that was used. It didn't seem spammy and things like that. But come to find out, there has really been a problem with reviews in the Amazon space. There's a really great Yahoo Finance article that goes over a lot of this and how sometimes we are tricked into believing what I believe, right? And various things. Some of them can be various types of bots, but some of them can be a bait and switch kind of methodology. Sometimes these are based from injections. Sometimes these are based on from the sellers of products themselves. But it's very interesting. If you get a chance, we'll have this link in the show notes that actually show you some examples and how this kind of trickery happens. And I think for a consumer, it is incredibly very sad. I think we need to know what are the good and the bad and the uglies of everything that we buy. If we can't rely on these posted, established ratings, reviews, descriptions, etc., then what are we to base things on in the online market? Because I can't touch and feel the products that I'm potentially going to buy. If I have a question and I post it, is it being answered of authority and I'm getting the correct answer, or is it something that's just being generated or somebody's, playing with something here that gives me, the good vibe that, I can go ahead and buy it. Where am I coming with all this, Dave? I think it's where we were a couple years ago on the cautiousness of reviews. It's important because I'm going to say it. I've been sort of duped by Amazon because I thought they were very good and very accurate. I'm not going to say it is widespread, and I know a lot of other companies and agencies and businesses out there have a lot more problems with this kind of maintainability and accuracy of information when it comes to this aspect than Amazon. But here's my kicker. Amazon is the leader of the fleet. Amazon is the one that we're all buying stuff from. Are we being tricked? I don't think I'm going to say tricked, but I'm going to say you could potentially be persuaded based on inaccuracies within their system.
It's really interesting, Steve, when you get into the customer reviews part of any business. And some of the Amazon numbers that I've seen thrown out there is as high as 95% fake reviews for some of the Chinese no-name companies that sell on Amazon is like third party. I've heard upwards of 30% are fake reviews across some of the categories. I'm not really quite sure, Steve. It's probably somewhere in between, but Amazon comes out and says that figure is way overblown. They say inauthentic reviews make up less than 1% of all reviews on Amazon last month. But still, Steve, if you look at the 200 million reviews that are out there, if you're looking at 1% of them, you're still saying that there's 2 million fake reviews on Amazon. That is still a substantial amount. Yes, based on the amount of product that they're pushing, the amount of, products that they're selling and that they have, it's probably still a very small amount. But you're still looking at a significant problem, right, Steve? I mean, when you think of how customer reviews came about, it was supposed to be sort of like the breakthrough, right? It was going to help sites like Airbnb, which is actually quite helpful. But when you go into like TripAdvisor, Yelp, Amazon, Uber, Lyft, I don't know, Steve, if the customer reviews, with the exception of a few companies like Yelp and Airbnb, if the actual written reviews really do much anymore. Steve, I'm going to be honest, when I go to Amazon or if we're booking something through somewhere, I'm asking my friends. I'm not going to reviews to see how this book was or how this product acted or how this phone worked or anything like that. I'm talking to my friends directly. I can't tell you honestly, Steve, the last time I went and looked at a customer review because I'm already buying into, I'm not sure if that's real. There's no sense looking at it. And that's where I get my reviews from, is my friends and family that say, you know what, you may not want to get this, or I really like this about the product, but I would upgrade and get this, or I would leave this off, or actually it's good, but it's not great. Find something else. That's what I do. And so I'm wondering, Steve, looking a little bit long term, is I've seen a lot of websites that have taken their comment section off. A lot of, Yahoo Finance has done it. We have a lot of local newspapers where it just gets ugly and disruptive and nasty on those comment threads. You see a lot of people just close those off. There's no more comment sections. I'm wondering at what point is Amazon, and TripAdvisor and some of those, Uber, Lyft, is that going to be, second nature to them? Is that going to be something they're going to fold in the future? I guess there's still some value, for the likes of Airbnb, TripAdvisor, and Yelp. I could see those three being but Uber, Lyft, we kind of know what we're going to get from them. We know Amazon, for the most part, they have such a great customer service environment already that if you don't like something, you can send it back. But, the problem is bad, and it's not really a good business model that you can really improve on, I don't think, Steve. I mean, you can have multiple different ways of posting fake reviews. As you mentioned, there's some Facebook hacks that people use. There are these bot armies that go out there. There are ways that you can look at specific wording. As you mentioned, the bait and switch. Sometimes wording just doesn't sound right, and you can tell that it's been written by a fake reviewer or someone that doesn't perhaps understand the native language here. And of course, you can check the reviewer profiles. I mean, you can have the same name with 4 or 5 different reviews on the same dates, and there's different scoring, on the stars, 0 to 5, and there's different language and text there. But Steve, I guess I'm coming from, it's a big problem. It needs to be managed. There obviously has to be some machine learning built into that and some crackdown from Amazon. I don't know if customer reviews is something for like Amazon that they should probably really be considered, or even if they want to move forward with something like that in the future. I don't know. I mean, it's probably big business for them. And I know getting a number of reviews and stars pushes your product up into more of a recommendation level where Amazon recognizes, okay, they're getting a lot of traction, they're getting a lot of reviews, we're going to push that up into people's carts, into their emails, push up into if they've liked something or bought something. Steve, I think there's better ways of going about it.
Well, I do too, Dave. And, it's unfortunate. It would be very nice to be able to honestly have authentic reviews. Now, not every product everybody is going to agree on. So you're going to have that disparity between, for example, a 1 and a 5. Okay, I can deal with that. But when there's just flat out fake crap, well, then my interest is gone. In the case of why do we even have them? So if you go to Walmart and you're looking at bicycles, is there a placard that has ratings and reviews from customers that have bought that product at Walmart? So why do we have them online, Dave? I guess as part of my question, is it because you can't see the product? Well, Airbnb, you can't see the product regardless unless you're there. So I'm starting to really get behind the movement of why do we need them at all? Why do we even need them? Should I not be able to evaluate a product on my own? And if I do have questions, talk to the vendor per se? I don't know. It's kind of a teeter-totter that I guess you could go either way. But we're going to find out here next what Netflix decided to do.
Yeah, one more note before we move on, Steve. I did want to point out a really good podcast episode from Reply All, and we'll have the link in the show notes. Actually, episode 124, and it's called The Magic Store. And their question that they seeked an answer to was, why does it seem like Amazon has suddenly got a lot sketchier? But it's a really good deep dive into sort of the underworld with Amazon and some of the reviews and how easy it is to rank your product and get fake reviews. It's a really good deep dive into that. So again, I'll have the link up in the show notes for everybody. I really encourage you guys to check out Reply All. They go a lot deeper. And of course, we'll have our Yahoo Finance link in there. And it's really good, Steve. I love topics like this because it can arm you and me and everyone that's out there listening is to when you look at a review, how do you know whether it's fake or it's not? And this is what it does. It will really provide you with a really good detail about is this a valid customer? Is this a valid account? Is this a fake review, a solid review? And so it's really good just to arm ourselves so that we don't get caught down that road of, okay, this product ended up being terribly, manufactured and, the reviews were all lies and now I got to send it back and get reimbursed, blah, 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 all that stuff. So that's what I really love about episodes like Reply All and this section we're talking about. It's just about providing us with a little bit more information in the toolbox that we can use to protect ourselves.
So hence, what does Netflix do about this? Netflix has been interesting when it comes to the rating and review process over time. For the majority of its existence, 1 to 5 scale, put your comments in, many other things. Then they went to a thumbs up, thumbs down type of system. Everybody thought Netflix was lying when they said, we're just going to delete all. They did it. Just a couple days ago, Netflix has deleted all user reviews from its website, and they're all gone, Dave. I guess you could look at this a multitude of ways. Their reasoning is there just wasn't as much input coming in anymore. I'm not sure I totally believe that in whole that that's the reason, but it's also part of the same complexity about erroneous information. And is there value to their viewing audience on a determination of what to watch? And I think they have decided that we need to let these entertainment aspects, I think, stand alone, have their own judgment from a viewer without really trying to enforce or, for lack of a better word, say it was sucky by somebody else. Is there another word for sucky? I don't know.
Influence?
Influence, okay.
That may be the word you're looking for.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah.
You're trying to talk and think at the same time when you're doing a podcast and sometimes they don't match up and it's
exactly.
Okay, make up a word, which I do a lot. Netflix, I got to say this, has always been bold. Netflix has always been bold in decisions and where they're going. And we in the media and podcasters and consumers, we all go, oh, you're full of crap. That's not going to work. No, I'm not going to pay that increased fee and this and this and this. And they always come out on top, don't they, Dave?
They always do. Absolutely.
And that's how I think Netflix is handling it now. To a degree, I kind of agree because I kind of got sucked into looking at some of that stuff periodically. Is this really going to be any good? But you know what? Go based on merit and just go for it.
Yeah, I'm Steve again. Like I mentioned in the previous one, I don't read reviews online. And to be honest with you, I will honestly here on this podcast, I did not know you could have customer reviews on Netflix. To me, it was never presented. It was never shown to me. It's obviously there, as a company rep has come out and said time and time again, writing a bad review never had any bearing to whether a title was recommended to other viewers or not. And I'm flat out saying, Steve, I had no idea I could review shows on Netflix. And so the question is raised is, they have come under some scrutiny for the quality of their programming. Obviously, you're going to have hits, such as Stranger Things and House of Cards, but there's been some other ones that my wife and I have watched a couple episodes and it's like, man, that is garbage. It's just not my thing. So maybe there was some theories out there that, people weren't pleased with their original programming. So it was actually driving down people's interest in watching their content instead of, third party or other studio productions. I'm not sure if that is actually the case or not, but it brings up a lot of different theories is what has transpired, what caused this. And I think your biggest thing, Steve, is they're bold. They want to make moves and they find a way to keep themselves in the headlines, from aside from a few tweets and a couple, little price raises, they've relatively stayed under the radar, right? And they continue to grow in South America and internationally in different marketplaces. And Steve, I guess for me, I don't see user reviews with Netflix giving them any benefit, right? I mean, people are going to Netflix naturally already. They continue to see subscribers sign up. They continue to see renewals month after month, and they're continuing to see that the streaming of their original content and other TV shows and movies continue to rise. So I don't know if you can connect that rise directly to user reviews from their site. I guess you could have some, but again, I'm going back to my original point. I'm talking to the people I know that like the things I like to watch and getting the word. Is it good? Is it bad? I mean, Steve, 3 weeks ago, I was over at a friend's house. We're barbecuing, and guess what we're doing? We're cruising through Netflix and Hulu being like, oh, you need to watch this. You need to watch that. We're not heading over to the user review section to see what's hot and popular and what people are saying, because we know what we're going to get. We're going to get the 1-star terrible reviews. We're going to get the 5-star, excellent reviews. Somewhere in between is going to fall into where you like the show. And I don't know where else to go with this, Steve, other than Netflix. Congratulations. I mean, that's one less thing you have to manage. Obviously, that's a little bit more profit in their book. That's less infrastructure and data they have to manage. But for whatever the reason was, people are still flocking towards Netflix because they continue to provide great comedy specials, great original programming, suspenseful entertainment. And that's what they're going for. So it doesn't really matter if there's a 1-star, a 5-star, or somewhere in between. It's the content is working for them. They continue to see growth, and that's really all that matters. And Steve, give it a month and people will even forget user reviews were ever a thing on Netflix.
That's a good point, because I really don't want to read a dissertation or a movie review. I really just want to know, is it okay or isn't it? That's kind of why I just like thumbs up, thumbs down.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I think for me that is okay, although you still got a apple and orange kind of thing. But I have seen circumstances where it's got a lot of thumbs up but bad written reviews. How is that possible? So you've got this whole mismatch of data that just doesn't work. And I say that industry wide, it's just not working. So we're going to see what decisions companies make in the future. For me, I'm not going to rely on them as much as I used to.
Yeah, it's review, Steve. Maybe a thumbs up, thumbs down. I know Rotten Tomatoes does a very good, 93%, 14%. I think as long as the service you're using provides just a quick snapshot of what people's opinion is of it, but that's only going to influence so many people, and it's going to be coming. There's shows that my wife watched that I don't care for. There's shows that I watch that she doesn't care for, and vice versa with friends and coworkers and colleagues. It's everybody has their own taste. Everybody's interested in their own thing. So I may give it this plot was terrible. Characters were terrible. It got better the last 10 minutes of every show, but I wasn't able to stick with it. Someone else is going to be like, this was great characters. I loved it. I can relate to it a lot. And so it just all comes down to nuance, Steve. It's what we enjoy as individuals, as families, as couples, whatever it is. That's really all that matters. Does it resonate with you in any such way? If so, you're going to have a positive reaction to it. If not, you're going to have the negative reaction. So
I guess online medium is based on reaction, whether it's positive or negative, because how else do you have determination, right? And I don't mean just ratings and reviews, but that could be pretty much anything across the internet, whether we're talking news outlets or we're talking about, I don't know, how you go down a slip and slide. We all have our variances and our opinions and how those are affecting us. And certainly the bottom price dollar for a lot of these companies, it's something that I think is very interesting, in that can precipitate to increased sales, even though information is erroneous. And unfortunately, I think that is just wrong, Dave.
Yeah, it's an interesting sort of place we're at now with customer reviews, both for the entertainment, movie side of things, original programming, to Amazon with the fake accounts. It's just a reality, and again, it's for each individual. Steve, I'm not going to spend the time to get on there and review a product or a movie or a show or anything like that. I, of course, do it in the podcast space because there's so many great podcasts out there, and I do want to contribute to that. But at the same time, there's just some industries I'm just not interested in taking any further and being invested in anymore. It's just like I was entertained, I'm good with, and I'll tell my buddies about it. And that's about as far as it goes for me.
So just real quick, Dave, podcast reviews through iTunes, do you think they have that flagrance also? Or do you think that they are pretty straightforward because we all want ratings and reviews? Here I'm kind of boasting. I'm not really saying yay to them anymore, but do you still find that applicable within the podcast space?
Yeah, I do. I think ratings and reviews for podcasts, it's, to whatever degree they have or do not have as far as influencing recognition across the podcast app or different podcasts, players. That's for a different discussion. But I think personally, I use it for just to show some love to the host. That's really all, because I know they check them. I know that they read them on air. They publish them with all their podcasts. So I think for me, it's a little bit more intimate because I've got to know the hosts and I can reach out to them on social media. You can email them. And so I for me, rating and reviewing a movie or a CD or anything like that through some different platform, not really my thing. But if I can do a direct connect to a host or to a couple hosts, I think for me it has a lot more value from that. So I think it plays a big factor into helping out the indie podcasters and also spreading the word and just sharing your love and respect for what they do.
I love that answer. I couldn't agree more. So if you're listening to the show, go ahead and head over to iTunes and give us a rating and a review, right, Dave?
Yeah, absolutely. It's super simple. Yeah, it's open up that podcast app or whatever app of choice that you're using. If they have a feature, rate and review, we'd appreciate it. So, Steve, I think that's going to wrap up episode 413. Next week, as promised through episode 412, we're going to have the executive director of 59 Days of Code, Rebecca Miller, join us to talk about what's going on up there in Fresno, California with the 59 Days of Code organization. It's a nonprofit that's up there that's really spurring and spawning a lot of technological innovation and creative solutions to the problems that they're suffering up there and up there in the Central Valley of California. So Steve, you and I went to it a couple weeks ago, and we're really excited to have her on next week to really share her story, how it got started, sort of the nuances of the organization and where it's going to go in the future. And I'm really excited to share that with our community.
I am too. This industry just doesn't stop, Dave. So we'll keep going until somebody gives us the boot. But until then, we're going to continue to ride the waves of tech and bring the latest news and information to you.
Exactly. Stole the words right out of my mouth, Steve. That's exactly what I was going to say. So thanks everybody for tuning in. Episode 413, The Waves of Tech, is powered by modernlife.network. Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to keep on teching.